Welcome back to the MR0 challenge. If you haven't watched the first video in the series, I'd recommend doing that first for some clarification, but simply put, I'm trying to beat all of Warframe while staying at MR0 the whole time. Additionally, it's solo only, which means no help or assistance from anyone else during this challenge. These videos take a ton of work to make, so if you want to see more, subscribe. If you want to watch me do the challenge live, my Twitch is in the description, and I'll be streaming here on YouTube too. First things first on our list of things to do is goal number 1, the Necramech. To build all of the parts for it, I was going to need to acquire some very specific rocks and fish. Weirdly though, while the Necrolisk offers a fishing rod, it doesn't offer a mining tool. So I headed off back to Fortuna, completing a bounty to get enough standing to afford a tranq rifle and a fishing rod. I then spent some time doing conservation and fishing out in the open world to get some more standing, finally being able to afford a 7-point plasma drill that I can use for mining, one of the better tools to do so. More importantly, I was able to buy a cute floof to decorate my orbiter. So, it's come to my attention, as I started working on bounties, that they're actually locked behind Mastery rank. That means as a Mastery rank 0 player, I can literally only complete the very first bounty. So our original plan of getting Zaku, Dagath, or Kalervo is down to just Dagath and Kalervo, as I'm no longer able to get Zaku. After getting absolutely annihilated in my very first Cameo Drift bounty, I knew that I was going to need a few more upgrades if I wanted to get through these with ease. There was a long road ahead of me on the Necramech grind, but before the rocks and fish I mentioned, we needed some standing, which meant that failing bounties was probably not very helpful. So, with the small bit of endo I had, I upgraded my melee weapon, upping my damage numbers to make bounties a bit easier. Admittedly, I was a bit discouraged after the failure, though, so I took a little break and started working my way towards completing the Phobos Junction. It was rather simple, just requiring that I go visit Meru on Mars, which took about 2 seconds. It also required I open some Void Relics, which took a bit longer as I didn't exactly have as many as I needed. One long and arduous excavation mission later, I was one step closer to the junction with a shiny new relic in hand. Completing the few relic missions I needed to, we make it to the junction. Absolutely annihilating the Spectre here and getting to Phobos. With that detour out of the way, it was time to get back to work. Let's actually go finish some bounties. To get the most efficient amount of standing, I traded in tokens with all of the Entrati family members. That way I could convert them into grandmother tokens, which were worth 1.5 times the amount of standing. But, of course, to actually acquire a Necramech, you don't just need standing. That's the easy part. The hard part? Everything else. I'm going to have to acquire some random fish parts, along with a bucket load of minerals and gems mined straight from the drift. I start with the fish. I wasn't quite sure exactly what the best fishing spots were, so I wandered around a couple of different spots. It wasn't too bad of a grind, as I eventually managed to pick up the 3 different fish that I needed parts from without too much of a hassle. I then let this strange infested lady do some ethically questionable things to my fish, and I'm all set.
You know what you're doing, so I'll let you get on with it.
Then, with some progress started on my Necramech, I decided to take another short roundabout, heading over to finish the Ceres Junction next. It's one of the simplest, just requiring that I beat one of the easiest bosses of the game, along with the Heart of Deimos quest, which I completed in the last video. I beat the Sergeant in a trivial amount of time. Now headed over to beat the Ceres Junction. Ceres Junction finished. Now I can say I'm about to embark on what is definitely the most difficult part of the Necramech grind, mining. While I picked up a few minerals here and there while doing bounties, it wasn't nearly enough to fund the whole thing. Now it's time to do a ton of mining runs, looking for some of everything, really. It wasn't just on the Cambion Drift though. After a bit of mining there, I headed over to the Orb Vallis to grab some Traverite that I needed for my mech too. After getting everything I needed from the Vallis, I headed over to the plains to pick up all of the Pharos that I needed. With all of these rocks acquired, I had everything I needed from the other 2 open worlds, and I headed back over to the Cambion Drift to finally finish the mineral hunting once and for all. There's one resource in particular that has constantly eluded me, Hecaphron. It's an uncommon gem, but for some reason I seem to be getting much more rare gems than I do this one, which has a higher chance to drop than them. I spent hours over the course of multiple streams trying to find this single resource until eventually. Okay, we get a double chance here if I hit this. Okay, that's huge. Oh! Oh my god, that's actually so big. Then, finally, we had everything we needed, except for all of the other resources you need that you don't even find very much of here. One of those resources, Orokin cells, were conveniently found on our upcoming planet, Ceres, so I pushed through to get to the Jupiter Junction, along with obtaining some of the Orokin cells from my Necramech on the side. While I was here, I figured I'd do the Junction too, requiring that I complete the Arkwing quest, take down Vor and Krill at Exta, and complete a 10-minute defense mission. The Arkwing quest just follows a short series of missions that has me collecting the blueprints for all of the Arkwing parts. After completing the missions, I head to my foundry, crafting up all of the parts and building my Arkwing. Then we take it on a short test flight, escaping from a deadly debris field. With that finished, I go ahead and ruin Vor and Krill's day, taking them down without much hassle. Then it's on to the survival mission, which goes without issue. And finally, the Jupiter Junction. The Spectre goes down, and we make it to Jupiter. Before I got any further, it was time to make some decisions and commitments. I needed to figure out what weapons and Warframe I intended to use. After some deliberation, I decided that in the spirit of the challenge, I would not only be sticking with Mag for the rest of the MR0 run, but also that I'd be using my default weapons as well. It would definitely complicate things and make it drastically harder, but I was here for a challenge. I wanted to see just how far I could stretch the limits of the starter gear. Now, there were a couple of resources remaining that I still needed, most notably a bucket load of plastids along with a couple more Orokin cells. There was one place I could get both of those at the same time in the most efficient manner, and that was Saturn, which is right next to Jupiter. So, it's time I speedrun some junctions. First up is the Europa Junction. This is by far the easiest junction in the entire game, just requiring that I complete an extermination mission in the void. One extermination mission later, and it's time we take the junction down. Now it's time for the Saturn Junction. It's another exterminate mission, this time on Europa. Additionally, we'll have to take down Alid V on Themisto. Another extermination mission later. And now we've destroyed Alid V's career on the Corpus Ladder. Then, just like that, we're at the doorstep of the Saturn Junction. With the Spectre taken out, it's time to start farming for plastids. I'll be making my way through Saturn's missions, getting a little bit sidetracked pursuing the junction, but overall collecting enough plastids to last me for at least one Necramech construction. Soon enough, I've made it to the Uranus Junction. I've completed the synthesis tutorial earlier, which I won't elaborate on, as Cephalon Mars is just a tad bit annoying. Cracking open the Meso relic was easy enough, but the complications arise when we get around to fighting the Grineer boss, Sargus Ruck. Sargus Ruck was genuinely one of the most challenging bosses I've fought in this challenge so far. I went into it thinking it would just be as trivial as the previous bosses, but I was severely mistaken. I died multiple times, and the fight took me a lot longer than I thought it would, but I did eventually manage to take him down. I definitely learned a lesson in that I was going to need to get much stronger to continue in this challenge. With Sargus Ruck no longer blocking my path, I head to the Uranus Junction. And with that done, finally, after the long grind that I embarked on, I began crafting all of the Necramech parts. Using a bit of my time travel skills, I quickly finished them all, and behold, the crafted Necramech! Goal number 1 is swiftly completed. And now, it's time for goal number 2. That is, of course, the Railjack. It's our second important plan to get to Warframe's endgame, and requires we get fairly far on the star chart, which is why I've been rushing through so much progress. However, I'll be making a small detour before we get our Railjack that I'll elaborate on in the next video. Upon some discussion with my chat, I came to the realization that there was going to be a massive problem, a huge roadblock in the way. I had no access to galvanized mods, limited access to augment mods, and very limited access to primed mods. And without any of those, completing Netrocells and Deep Archimedia just wouldn't be very easy. And that's putting it mildly. This was gonna be really, really hard. I know that I have to really start gearing up now. I was already beginning to struggle against these level 20 enemies. There was no way I was going to fight ones that were level 200. Sargus Ruck had shown me that I was clearly lacking in the damage and durability department. It was time to start the vault hunting. And hey, I just want to say I appreciate all of the support for what I'm doing. Thank you for subscribing, commenting, and giving me some helpful hints for how to make this challenge work. I really enjoy reading what you all have to say. And thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more.